Was this a black-eyed kid in Mexico, or is it something completely different? This guy says the story he's about to share is a story that he's heard his grandfather share with a lot of people throughout the years. He explains how the story has never changed, it's always remained the same, so he definitely believes what his grandfather said. When his grandfather was little, they lived in a ranch basically far away from the city. This was a large family, so the grandfather was the youngest out of a lot of siblings, and mom and dad, of course. Being that the family was huge and the grandfather wouldn't get a lot of attention, he would end up doing really bad things to his siblings, including the mom. He would prank them, he would just do things that weren't even funny, so he was always getting into trouble. He got into so much trouble that they started punishing him by making him take the goats up to the mountain so that they can go and eat. Side note, this is exactly how they would punish my stepdad too. And I've been to like those mountain places. They're fucking scary. I almost died because I fell and I kept rolling down the fucking hill. I don't know how I held onto a branch and didn't fall off that damn cliff. But anyway, this is not my story. The grandfather really hated that punishment, so the entire way up the mountain he would be cussing, he would be doing like really bad things, including like kicking the goats because he didn't want to do it. So he says that in one of these days where he got punished and he had to go and take the goats up to the mountains, he came up the mountain and onto this clearing. There, he saw this really big rock and decided that he was gonna sit on it just to get some rest. So he'd been sitting on that rock for a while, and then out of nowhere, the goats started acting strange. They were running, they were acting out. It was almost as if they were scared or in like defensive mode. That was also the moment where he felt almost as if something or someone was watching him. He also says that he would hear like leaves ruffling, almost as if somebody was there. He thought that maybe it was an animal, like a coyote or something, but that was also the moment where he heard someone calling his name. He was looking around and didn't see anything, and it was only until he saw this really big bush that had some nopales around it where he saw a little boy who was around 5 or 6 years old. So he saw the little boy and started walking towards him, and when he got a little closer, he noticed that the little boy was naked, and that's when he started to worry because he's like, oh my gosh, is something wrong? What if this little boy got lost up here in the mountain? So he decided he was gonna walk towards the boy a little bit more, but then he stopped altogether, and that was because of what he saw. He saw that that little boy's eyes were completely black. There was no white in them. Meanwhile, the goats had not calmed down. They were still running, being scared, and then ended up behind the grandfather. Like they just stood behind him. And the grandfather, he just stood very still. He was still trying to think about what exactly he was looking at. Was this a kid? Why is he naked? Why are his eyes completely black? And then that little boy picked up his hand and went like this to the grandfather for him to get closer to him. Bitch, I would start rolling down that hill again and not stop myself. The grandfather was not about to get close to him, so he decided to ignore his little like come close to me. And that was also in the moment where that little kid in a really raspy deep voice tells him, come closer. In that moment, the grandfather was like, hell no, I am not getting close to this thing. He decided to start running down that path that he had just came up from, and even the goats were running with him. The grandfather says that he did not have the courage to even look back and see if that little boy was chasing him until he got to the house. Obviously, when he got home, he was agitated, he couldn't breathe, he had just ran all the way there, and he also was not about to tell his family because they weren't going to believe him. So he just decided to like lay on the ground underneath a tree and just get his breath back. So as he's laying there trying to catch his breath, trying to have a reason as to what just happened, he said he couldn't. He thought that maybe he was having like a heart attack. He had no idea what was going on. He decided to turn and look at that path just to make sure that little boy was not coming down, and unfortunately that little boy was standing there. He explained how it was too much for him, and when he saw that little kid, he just fainted. When he finally wakes up, he's in his bed and his mom is next to him asking him what happened. The grandfather did tell the mom what happened, and just as he suspected, they did not believe him. The grandfather explains what happened to him was very, very real, and he believes that he bumped into the devil as a lesson because he was misbehaving. He was doing a lot of bad things. He thinks that it was a lesson to tell him, hey, if you continue to do this, I'm gonna take you with me. Honestly, we've heard of black-eyed kids, right? I've never heard of any in Mexico, but also all the stories that we've heard, they're definitely dressed. So why was that little boy naked? Was it a black-eyed kid, or was it something like completely different? But also, why were the goats scared of it? The goats were definitely scared of whatever that was. Anyway, those are just my thoughts. What do you guys think?